Welcome to the We'll Bring the Popcorn Film and TV podcast. I'm Brad, that's Josh, and today we are reviewing Ballerina and Predator, Killer of Killers.
So in one of the follow-ups to one of our favorite movies of the year last year, we got some word from Fede Alvarez this past week that not only is a sequel to Alien Romulus coming, but they're already in the pre-production phase and they're getting ready to film the film in October, which is awesome. Like, I'm excited to see where he takes it next, but very few details about it beyond that. We don't know what's going on with the story, who's coming back, potentially, what the story is going to be about, but it's cool that he's already got an idea in the can and they're getting ready to start filming very soon.
You got to expect, unless they're going in a completely different part of the universe or world, that Andy and Rain are going to be back and probably see what is going on with them. But yeah, we've heard nothing about it, and then all of a sudden, like, oh yeah, we're in pre-production. We film in October. Okay, then. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Like, you can go back and archive, see our review of it. I enjoyed it. I was a little critical of it because it did feel like he relied a little too much on throwbacks, and I really enjoyed the style and what he was doing. Like, I really wanted to see his originality and everything that he could bring to it, and that's what we're expecting in the second one, is that he's basically, all right, he's introduced this world, he's done his throwbacks and everything, now it's time for him to just let loose and do whatever he wants with it. And that's why I'm really excited about the sequel, because even though the first one was good, and I've rewatched it, and I think my rating of it has gone up a little bit higher from that, because like I said, I was a little critical because it was, well, here's this, here's that, or this is all throwbacks, which is fun and fine. But he's such an original, unique type of director that I wanted to see more of his originality in it. And so, yeah, that's why I'm really looking forward to the sequel.
Yeah, and we'll see what comes out of it. But yeah, it's exciting that it's already. I love when we get good surprises like this, because you hear so often now about like we talked about last week with like Avengers and everything being delayed and everything. You always hear like bad news when it comes to like production and stuff like that. Now it's just like, oh yeah, we're getting ready to film it. It's ready to go now, and we're like, oh nice. Yeah. Like it's a pleasant surprise when we get news like that, because it's so much of like, this is behind schedule, or we're having issues with X, Y, and Z.
You've been delayed 23 years.
Yeah, it's just like, it's insane. But to get good news like that is a very welcome thing, and I'm excited for that film when it comes out. And
it's big for him. Of course, he started really small and got his big break with, what was it, Evil Dead that he did and everything. So it's good to see that it did well enough for them to even say, hey, let's go back and see what you do. Ridley Scott said he's kind of done. There was talks that he was going to come back and do another Alien film himself, but he came out, I think, just last week and said something like, you know what, I'm kind of done, and I've done everything I can do in the Alien world, and we kind of got hints, and we'll talk about it with Predator, Killer of Killers and stuff when we go over that we could be seeing maybe another mashup coming with the Alien franchise as well. So there's a lot still to be excited about with the Alien and even Predator franchises.
Yeah, definitely more meat on the bone and more good content coming the way. I'm excited for the next Predator film that's coming out later in the year as well. That's going to be exciting to talk about too.
I want to move us into another story, because we talked about it a few weeks back that we were supposed to have Saw 11 last year, and then we were supposed to have it this year, and then it comes out that everybody's fighting. No one could get, they haven't filmed a thing. The Saw franchise seemed to be dead in the water. Well, Blumhouse has stepped in, and they're purchasing the 50% that Twisted Pictures owns. So Lionsgate still owns 50% of it, so they're still going to be a partner with the Saw films, but Blumhouse has purchased it away from Twisted Pictures so that they can now either move forward with Saw 11, reboot Saw, maybe do a different Saw 11 than what they were trying to come up with before. But it's looking like it's in different hands now.
Yeah, and that's a hell of a combo to come together with Blumhouse and Lionsgate. That's two pretty powerhouse, film companies and studios, like each owning a 50%. You kind of wonder, in my mind, immediately, when you have two different studios in operation, who's going to take the lead on what, and are they going to be able to kind of work creatively together to create, something really good with, the extension of the Saw franchise and everything. But time will tell, of course, obviously, but like, it's exciting, but it's also like, I don't want to take it to like a negative turn on this, but it's like you have two different studios who operate in similar but different spaces, if that makes any sense. Like Lionsgate's more of the action, straight up action kind of films, and Blumhouse has kind of taken over the world with horror. You know, like they've been very heavy in the horror space. Let's say with them and A24, kind of like the two bigger horror studios. Like what kind of influence either one of them are going to have on this franchise and what direction they take it in. But it's cool that they come together for it, but I'm just interesting to see how creatively things kind of mesh when it comes to something like that.
Well, some of the good news is that James Wan, who did the original Saw film, he's back with creative control of the franchise. So he's come back with this deal. Yeah, so cool. He's kind of gonna be the in between these two studios with the creative side to be able to get this going. So again, but we still don't know. Does that mean Saw gets a reboot or they continue on the direction? I mean, you're talking about they've done 10 so far.
It's crazy.
Is it time to kind of reboot it and restart it? You have a new company producing most of it. I mean, Lionsgate is more likely just going to be distributor while Blumhouse is handling everything else. So we'll see if they decide if they want to change it up and like restart it from the beginning or something.
Yeah, I love seeing James Wan back at the helm. That original Saw movie was so freaking good. I mean, there's been other good films in the franchise, but that original was so creative and so well done. It's one of my favorite like horror movies of the last 20 years. You know, that it was just so ahead of its time, and in just the presentation, the twist at the end caught so many people off guard. Like it was one of those true times that people were really surprised by how a film ended and where it ended, and everybody's like, oh, this feels like such a breath of fresh air. That, you know, they've tried to recreate that magic so many times over the last 9 films that probably haven't gone as well as the original, but it's had some staying power. It's been very popular, you know, with each one that they've put out. It's been fairly consistent as far as like the audience that's there for it. So if they decide to continue it on, cool. If they decide to reboot it and go in a new direction, I'm okay with that too. It's going to be interesting to see where they go.
I can't but laugh and think of, when I think of the first Saw movies, all the spoofs and everything that came after it, especially, I think it was one of the scary movies that had Shaq and Dr. Phil, and Dr. Phil ends up cutting off his foot, and Shaq's like, wrong foot. Oh, he cut off the foot without the shackle.
I love that. It's
that so pops in my head every time that I think of the first Saw movie.
I love that.
But yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what they do with it. This also brings up with Blumhouse, they have so many different big kind of characters in horror. They're also doing Dead by Daylight and doing some other stuff. Do we have a big collaboration of all these different horror icons in one film coming because of that? Like, are they going to bring Megan and bring Jigsaw and all that into a single film to have our like Avengers level horror film with all these bunch of different killers, because they have licenses, different properties where they could do that with it.
Yeah, and they're also working, got announced this week, they're working to help produce a Phasmophobia movie too, which is another, you know, pretty popular horror game that they're going to work to develop a, you know, a live action film for. So a lot of things in the oven for Blumhouse right now. They're just kind of got their hands in everything. I'm really excited about the Dead by Daylight movie. That game's a lot of fun. Like a lot of these horror movies or horror games that we like to play are coming to the screen, and it's exciting for a number of reasons. Hopefully they all, you know, they do them all justice and we get some fun movies coming out of it, because in the end, that's what we really want to see, you know? Yeah,
because Blumhouse has Megan 2.0 coming out, which looks ridiculous and silly and crazy and everything else. You got the Black Phone 2. You have Five Nights at Freddy's 2, which they said, we heard you fans. Like you said, it wasn't scary enough, wasn't bloody enough, wasn't this and that. We heard you, so it's going to be interesting to see how that, because that was kind of a mild horror film. Like it's the games can be pretty creepy. And again, bravo to that guy. One guy who created those games and has turned it into film and merchandise and everything else. Like, crazy. Just bravo to him to be able to turn something small that he was creating into such a huge property. And you've got a sequel coming out to it. But it's going to be interesting. They have all these different horror films, and they've, like you said, with A24, they've been kind of the leading in the last few years of putting out pretty decent, solid horror films. Like they can be very hit or miss. Sure. But they're the ones leading up horror big time.
Yeah, and it's exciting to see all the things they got on the horizon for sure, too. But, you know, we're talking about horror movies coming up here in a couple weeks. We have one of our most anticipated movies of the year, and 28 years later. We had Danny Boyle coming out this week giving some updates about what, it was originally announced to be a trilogy. We don't know what their plans were beyond 28 years later necessarily, but Danny Boyle did come out this week and did mention that if we do get the second and third films of this trilogy, that Cillian Murphy is going to be a part of those films as well. We still don't know what his involvement is in 28 years later necessarily. Tons of theories on the internet, currently about what his involvement is, but if he's going to be involved in the next two, we'll see what happens with that. But they did mention that the second film, if they get to make it, is going to take place immediately after 28 years later, and still a little vague on the details on the third one. But it seems like they have a plan, and they got Cillian Murphy on board for multiple movies if they're down to make them.
Yeah, and they already have a different director on board for part 2 for the second film, but Danny Boyle did confirm if the third one gets made, said it all depends on how the first one does. If they get to continue on with this, he will return to film that potentially final in the franchise. We know it's taken so long to get all these out, unless it gets spinoffs or anything else. But did you see the pictures that have come out of the camera rigs and stuff they did? Because I saw one, because they've hyped up that they filmed this on iPhones, but you'll see the iPhone, and then you see like a V8 engine in front of it. That's the whole camera housing. But they also built a rig that had like 20 different iPhone cameras on it, so they could film in like ultra wide screen or something. Like, it was pretty crazy to see that. It looked heavy, and because it looked like it was a big metal base. I mean, 20 iPhones aren't going to be heavy, but the structure that they made to hold them all looked like it was heavy. And like, how you're filming chasing running zombies and all this other stuff with this rig that looks about 10 foot wide.
It's so insane to see, like, the creativity and just the ingenuity that goes into making these films. It's like one of my dreams in my life is to go be a part of a filming of this, to just kind of be a fly on the wall and see the whole process. Like, I know it's not always the most glamorous thing to make a film. Obviously the end product is what we're all hoping is great at the end, but I kind of want to see the whole thing made from start to finish. Get in the weeds a little bit and kind of see all the intricate details that go into getting the shots.
See how they pull off the magic.
Yeah, just be a part of that whole process. It's always been so fascinating to me. But yeah, that setup they had was insane to make that happen. And it's just one of the things I love about film so much is just the creativity that goes along with it.
And one that, it did film pretty low budget, the original stuff. So it's nice that, I guess 20 iPhones really isn't that low budget when you think they're $1,000 a piece at least, depending on, the storage capabilities and stuff. But it's still that they're feeling like they're going back to the roots, where they had to be a little more frugal, and they had to be a little more interesting with how they film things and how they use their cameras and how they shot and stuff. And it feels like it's been almost 28 years since they did the original, that they're still trying to go back to the heart and the core of doing it in a different, interesting way to make it feel like it's not your regular standard,
aesthetic,
different film that they're doing. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. We're only a couple weeks away from that coming out now, and it's going to be one that I never saw the original in theaters. The original 2, or the original was it 2 or 3 that they've put out so far? 2, because 28 weeks and 28 days.
Yeah, this is the third one.
So this is the third one.
Yeah.
It throws me off because they're popping a trilogy starting with the third one.
Right.
They're bringing in a new trilogy, and so you would think, well, okay, so this will bring it rounded out to 6.
Yeah, and I see
it's rounding out to
Can't
5.
Can't have that.
But yeah, it's going to be fun to check it out and see just what they end up doing with it. The trailers have looked pretty solid. It's got some creepiness. You've got the craziness of it. I'm really looking forward to see what they end up doing with 28 years later.
And just seeing where we are in the world with this, obviously being 28 years into all the events that kind of kicked off in the first one, that, we're really ramping up here into seeing how crazy the world is and how it has to operate. So I'm excited to kind of dive back into that world and see what everything looks like in the lay of the land a little bit. And I can't get to see that movie soon enough. I'm so excited for it.
And talking about someone else who has done some pretty wild and crazy things with his films lately, and James Cameron has just been wrapped up in Avatar for the last, I think, 67 years. Those have been in production. Like they've been working on them forever. He has got the rights to a book called The Devils that he is co-writing with the author to bring out. It's this this fantasy, not sci-fi. It's a fantasy novel that has all these big creatures. It's almost like a Suicide Squad type of, almost like Creature Commandos type of deal here that they're going to do. But it's really interesting to see what they end up doing with the Devils. So it's about a special force of monsters enlisted to save Europe from a scourge of flesh-eating elves. So, rated R?
It's got to be. But, I get it, though. James Cameron, I know you and I kind of talked a little bit about it before we started recording this. Like, yeah, he's been so tied up with Avatar, but if I were making billion-dollar movies, like, I would be tied up in that, too. Like, go ahead and get your bag, dude. Like, every single one of those movies does incredibly lucratively well.
And the pinnacle of, like, special effects.
Yeah, like he's on the cutting edge of everything as far as, like, visuals and everything and storytelling. You can argue the merits of how good the stories actually are, but at the end of the day, they're both multi-billion-dollar films, so it's, I can imagine why he would put his time and focus into that. It's very lucrative for him and good for him, but this would be cool to be like a little palate cleanser for him to see where he takes this and what comes out of it, because Avatar, right, wrong, or different, it's wrapping up in the next couple years. I believe they've got
Avatar 4 is scheduled for 2029.
Yeah, so in like 4 years, and that you kind of roll your eyes at it, but you blink and it's going to be 2029. Like time just moves by so quickly anymore. But like 4 years isn't that far off, really. And by the time he's done making this, he'll probably be somewhere in the 2028 range, maybe early into 2029. So he's got time to put it together and get the ball rolling on this. To maybe we get it not too long after that. And I'm excited to see what he comes up with, because the premise sounds neat, and we'll see what we'll see what it looks like by the time it comes out. But yeah, it's an interesting concept for a story for sure.
Yeah, it looks like this is going to be his next film that he's going to do, but he won't be really starting it until after he wraps up the third Avatar movie. It's due out in December, so he's probably still got editing and everything else, because Superman just went 100%, and it's out in less than a month now, or around a month. I think when we're recording this, it's a month away. Right. So most films don't finish until about a month or two right before. So he's still probably got quite a lot of Avatar 3 that he's still got to edit, and especially special effects have to be finished, and that's probably going to be running right up to the wire and stuff. So once all that's out, Avatar 3's out, he's moving right into this. So you would think, yeah, there are probably films in 2026 with maybe a 2027 release for that. And then he has 2.5, 3 years to work on Avatar 4. But yeah, it's hard to see him having time for a lot of other stuff because of how much Avatar takes out of him. Yeah. They film for a long time. You got the motion capture, you've got all the editing, like the special effects for it take 1 to 2 years to do just it's by itself.
Yeah, which is an insane lead time for a film. But obviously, when they go and make the bajillion dollars that they do, worth the time and the patience at that point. Because when you're putting out $1 billion films, man, you're gonna want them to be right. But man, that's crazy. But it's gonna be cool. I'm excited to see what that what comes out of that, because it sounds really neat.
It could be really neat. It almost sounds like a video game that we've played before and stuff. It's just like, all right, that could be a really interesting visual and story that they do. I've never read the book. I might try to check it out before it comes out, but it sounds like it's going to be really interesting to do.
Yeah, I'm excited for it for sure. And I wanted to touch on one last news story before we get into our reviews. And we've talked about Sean Levy taking the helm of a Star Wars film, and we were wondering, what it's going to look like, what it's going to, what's going to happen with this Starfighters film that he's got. But he's got apparently 2 big stars in the bag ready to, be a part of this film. You get Ryan Gosling, who's going to be the lead in the film, playing a character who's guarding his nephew from like evil pursuers and things like that. And then you've got, Mia Goth, who, is a very popular horror actress and everything. Like, she's coming on board to the film to play one of the villains, which is a very interesting turn for her in that, because she's usually like the lead in these horror films, and not so much on the villain side necessarily, but she's going to take that dark turn here in this one. But I'm excited to see, what comes out of it, because, we love, several of the movies that Sean Levy has put out, and now he's getting control of a Star Wars film.
Yeah, Mia's role was originally went to Mikey Madsen, but there's some sort of dispute between them. They couldn't come to an agreement, so she backed out, and Mia Goth has come in, which that's huge for her. I mean, she skyrocketed popularity through the X movies and everything else, but it's like, you got Star Wars now.
Yeah, you're good.
No matter what it is, like, Star Wars is a pretty big thing to have on your resume, whether it's good or not. We'll see, and what the fan reaction is to it or not, because it could be a great movie. Fans could absolutely hate it. But, I mean, it's a big thing to go from X and Pearl and all those to going into
Star Wars.
doing Star Wars.
It's a huge thing. And a little bit of tidbit about the film, like it's supposedly taking place about 5 years after episode 9, which means there may or not be some of those characters involved in that. We don't know yet necessarily if that's going to be the case. I kind of hope they just clean slate and move away from it and move kind of out of that pocket of the universe and start exploring some of these other areas.
If they just have a cameo by the little bitty alien guy.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that. I'd be more than fine with that if that's the limit to the extent of how much they reference that. But, you know, it takes place in a similar timeline a few years down the road, and we'll see if it has any connection to those films. I kind of hope it doesn't, and they move on and do their own thing. But, yeah, I mean, you get Ryan Gosling a part of your film. That's a huge get, and you know, excited to see what he does in the Star Wars.
And we'll see if he gets his buddy Ryan Reynolds to pop up and voice an alien or something in there.
So
Since Sean Levy and Ryan have done so much stuff together now and we're gonna have Hugh and Ryan being aliens who are like fighting with each other or something and being pilots. But Starfighter is an interesting one because it's kind of, I think, the first Star Wars film we're going to get after Mandalorian and Grogu that's dealing with the sequels. Yeah. Because we have the Rey film that's supposed to be coming out. That's been delayed. Could this lead into the Rey movie at all? Are they looking to connect those in that way? Or hopefully maybe let it be its own thing? But with them saying it's set 5 years after Episode 9, it could be a way of them connecting and leading into that. Oh, well, we get to see... How do we go from Episode 9 to where Rey is like running an academy and teaching Jedi and stuff? Well, maybe he visits a planet that she's on and, oh, hey, there she is. But so it could end up being kind of a little gateway film that leads into others. But the Star Wars film-wise has been such a strange slate after the sequels because we've had so many films announced and nothing coming out.
Yeah, it's like they can't get anything across the finish line, so we'll see what happens with this. But I'm excited for it, man. Like I said, good actors, good director. We'll see what they come up with.
So I'm going to move us right over into our first film review of this week. So we have, even though you want to do the full title From the World of John Wick, Ballerina, it's much better to just call it Ballerina. You know they want to make sure you know it's John Wick. They've shown Keanu Reeves in the trailer so much, but Ballerina's one that I wasn't too certain going into because it had kind of a lot of drama behind the scenes. And maybe it wasn't as dramatic as what we heard, but the last word we got is that because it got delayed a year, it's almost like they went back and reshot the entire film because they weren't happy with what. They said it was to go back and add more action to it, but I would be curious to see what it was before this, but what we ended up getting out of Ballerina, I really enjoyed. I had a lot of fun with this film. If you love the John Wick movies, I can't see why you wouldn't enjoy this one. I'm just going to start that straight from the beginning because it was that enjoyable. Ana de Armas was really solid in it. You got a different look at our hero because when we got with John Wick, you know, we see him get beat down a little bit, but we know he's the Baba Yaga. He is a very strong marksman and person. But with this story, we're seeing, you know, her character Eve. We're starting off with her young. We find out that her dad's been involved in a lot of bad stuff with this other group that even the director doesn't want to even deal with. Like they have their agreement to basically stay out of each other's way and stuff. But her dad is ended up killed, and it kind of goes to her journey that she wants to get revenge as she's going to go through the program that turns her into a killer like John Wick. Yeah, and you know you kind of take it off from there. I really got a lot of enjoyment out of this film too. I would say some of the plot was a little just kind of meh for me, honestly. But like, if you know these John Wick films, one thing they do really well is action scenes, fight scenes, choreographed and everything. And you're getting that in spades here. This timeline-wise, if you're looking for a point of reference, takes place between John Wick 3 and John Wick 4. So it falls right there on that timeline. So you get, when you see John Wick, he's in that mind space of trying to get out, and the where his mindset is kind of plays a heavy factor into his involvement in this film. So you get what John Wick you do get is that, like, him
looking and plotting his escape, which, he is a very heavy point in John Wick 4, but you get all of the incredible action stuff. You get Ana de Armas developing into this incredibly skilled fighter who, they lean heavily into the fact that because she's, a woman, she can fight a little dirtier. She can get a little grittier with her fighting. You maybe have to be a little more creative with the way she does it. And they do it really well. Like, they do a lot of the training stuff they go through with her is really cool. I'm not the biggest on the whole familial element that they threw at her in this film. Like, this whole other group that they're worried about, she's kind of connected to. She's, got connections there that she didn't know she had.
It's a very weird cult.
Yeah, thing. I would say that was probably my biggest issue with it, but man, I was still very thoroughly entertained by this movie. Like I said, they do the fight scenes incredibly well. Ana de Armas is captivating in every scene that she's in. She really chews up every scene that she finds herself in, and she's just an incredible actress. I'm a big fan, honestly.
The fight sequences with her just felt raw and real because she is in training, so she's not as polished and everything else. And you see that she struggles and she's having to get creative with what she does, and it made it that much more interesting to me because the story it's dealing with the people who killed her father as this kind of crazy cult type of thing, and it tries to give a payoff in the end of exactly what they are, but it just kind of, you didn't really care about that in the end. Right. You just wanted to watch her get her revenge and watch her go on a rampage and stuff. And I did have to laugh at some scenes because it's almost like with Deadpool, where he gets a duffel bag full of weapons and stuff, and he puts it in the cab, and he's going to go fight the final fight, and then he leaves the duffel bag in the car. We get a few of those sequences in this movie, like, all right, she's armored up, she's ready to go through. You left it in the car, and you never go back to the car. Right. But it made it really interesting because she's scrounging around. Like, you didn't need to have her loading those guns and weapons up if you were just going to leave them behind, because it didn't really add anything. It was just a throwaway. Having her scrounge and scrap to find stuff, because you get a sequence in here that is very much like the Dragon's Breath sequence in was it chapter 4 had the Dragon's Breath? Yeah. Like, it was incredible with the flamethrowers and everything. That was such a fun, interesting way to do that action. But like, if you got the John Wick stunt and action coordinators doing a film, I'm gonna go watch it because the action is just so incredible. It just looks so, cinematography-wise, it looks fantastic, but the action sequences just have such a beautiful flow to it. Like, you just feel that, okay, yes, she is a little woman, but what she's doing is realistic to what she could do to those guys and those people in real life. And even the grenade sequences and stuff, like, there's a big sequence with it. That was a ton of fun. Even some stuff like, oh wow, like you went there and you went creative with it. Like, but the story can be a little forgettable with that cult and that family, and they try to do a little twist, but then they kind of wipe that twist away pretty much immediately. I won't go into full spoilers on that, but
didn't feel very consequential.
The action, like, I was hooked from the beginning with the action with Ana de Armas. Like, she had me in there. Like, I want to follow your story. It's a very much a John Wick revenge. Like, his was a dog, hers is her dad and her family and everything else, but she held her own just really well. Like, there was no questioning that, okay, she could do this and she has this, and she kind of really solidified herself from this film being a potential new big action star. Like, she was a Bond girl in one of the Bond films, which you didn't really get much out of this. Like, this is really showing what she can do with action, and she was really fantastic in it.
Yeah, and I'm glad in the end they kind of just went back and reshot, and if they were doing it to add action and more punch to it, I could see why they did. Because if they didn't have as much in it, it probably wouldn't have been as good of a movie, honestly. If you depend so much more on, narrative and plot devices and everything like that, like we focus on that very heavy when we review films as much as we can here, and that's why I think probably it'll bring down a little bit my final grade on it. But if it was just based on the action and the fighting alone, like, it's just top notch. Those guys really have it dialed in on the way to properly shoot fight sequences, action sequences, and I love the creativity in making it look realistic for the type of fighter that she was and the inexperience that she had, but the creative mind that she still had. Super cool, like seeing like her instincts kick in and do other things, and it's just a ton of fun because for as much as she dishes out, she takes a lot too, man. She gets the crap kicked out of her quite a bit in this movie, but she endures and she, you know, has that training pay off in a very satisfactory way in this film, and it was just a lot of fun. If they decided to go back to that well for her for something else, I would not be against it in any way, shape, and form.
I would love to see some continuation with the Ballerina. Like, we know that John Wick 5 is coming. We don't exactly know what that's going to be. Was this kind of a way to introduce her more into the world, to have a bigger role in the John Wick 5? We don't really know. And of course, I was really curious if it's just going to feel like they shoehorned in Keanu Reeves and John Wick into this just to help carry the movie some more. I don't think it fully needed, but I think they did it smartly. Like, I'll give them credit for how they used him. Well, smart, because as you said, it's between chapter 3 and 4. He's in this kind of weird state of he's trying to kind of end everything, get out, find his way out. He even warns her, like, the door's still unlocked. You can leave. And trying to tell her, like, you shouldn't do this. But it did feel like they used him right. Like, you mixed in some scenes and stuff from the John Wick movies where she's watching from afar and everything else. But I think it did it pretty smart. And you got there's some behind the scenes, if you want to watch it, is out there of her and Keanu Reeves warming up for one of their fights. And they went at it. Like, I just love the action that they did in here. But I do think it mixed in John Wick rather well, because it could have felt like, okay, you just have the Baba Yaga in there just to have him in there, but it worked.
Yeah, it did, and it wasn't overused, it wasn't overdone. It was the right amount of inclusion of that for him, and I think the movie didn't really suffer from any pacing issues either. Like, I felt like it was a pretty smooth run the entire film of, you know, no issues with pacing, no issues like not being able to keep my attention during the film. Like, it was one that had me kind of gripped in and watched what was going on the entire time, and that's a sign of a solid film too. Like, to give it credit, like, is it a perfect film? No, but it's a very, very entertaining action film that, you know, if you're into that genre, if you love the John Wick movies, this is going to be right up your alley, because it's very much in that same stylized manner that the John Wick films are done in, and you know, this is hopefully a way to kind of expand in that world a little bit and, you know, start involving some more groups of people and getting a little bit of spotlight on the ballerinas and see what the future of that holds, because I think there's more meat there that you can kind of.
Yeah, they definitely set up that there's something that could go from the end of this film.
Yeah, I'm excited for that and to see if they go that route and what they do with it, because you talk, you know, with, you know, a show like The Continental not doing as well on Peacock, if they go more the film route and expand on the ballerinas and things, like what that's going to look like if that kind of takes its place, I'm all for it, because you know, there's some really interesting stuff here, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention, you know, the last film acting role for Lance Reddick, who
his last appearance here in John Wick. I think there's another film that he did was his last,
which is crazy, but that's how long it's been since this film has been underway to kind of see the light of day, and that was kind of why we had some trepidation on what the film was actually going to look like when it came out, because it was shot that long ago with him in it, and he's been passed for almost 2 years now, and that's like, it's not an insignificant amount of time, and you don't know how it's going to hold up, especially when you hear those things like, oh, they had to go and reshoot a bunch of stuff, and you're like, that usually doesn't bode well for a film. But I think in this case it was the right call, because it paid off a lot better than what it could have been had they not gone with it.
And it's the simplest line that he gets to say. I mean, he gets a few more lines, but just saying "Welcome to the Continental," like, no one delivers that in the way he says, "Welcome to the Continental." Like, I can't even mimic it. Like, really it just sounds so good in his tone and the way of speaking and stuff. He's going to be greatly missed. But yeah, this is his final appearance in the world of John Wick and stuff. And it was a minor role, but it was still. It was nice to see him back in there, and just sad that he's gone. You got Ian McShane was in there as Winston again, which he was kind of fun. Just get to kind of ham it up with Ana de Armas some. And like he gets mixed into the story. Like, they need something to connect all these worlds together. It's Winston that connects it all together and stuff. So you also got Norman Reedus playing a role in here, which I thought he did fine and great. There's only just one scene. It was the final scene of him that was just like, okay. Like there's stuff that happens to him in the film, and he's kind of crucial to the overall plot. Even though that was kind of just felt like a shoehorned in thing. Like, oh well, we're going to present something that's very similar to her childhood to give her an extra motivation to do stuff. But it was the way that he's injured, but he just moves and talks and looks around like nothing's happening. Like I think he just kind of forgot that. Okay, you're supposed to be injured acting this way, and he's like, all right, come. It was just a little strange. Like it was not a real knock on his acting. It was just kind of just an odd final sequence with him. But I think he did a fine enough job in there. Like he got to get in on a little bit of the action and stuff too. But there are some sequences and how they do things. Like as I said about the bags and everything else. Like she checks into a hotel room at the Continental next to his room because she knows that he can lead her to this cult group. Well, she's got a bag full of stuff, which she leaves in the room, and then she goes after to go to him, and we never see that bag again. So it's that stuff that they introduce several things in the film. That's where really the only place where this movie is losing anything is because the story just wasn't as tight as it could have been, because it had some of those kind of laughable moments like that, where it's like, oh, she grabbed the stuff, she checked, she immediately goes, oh, she forgets everything.
Yeah.
Oh, you borrow a car, you put all your stuff in there, oh, you forget everything.
Yeah.
We never see it again. Like, it's just kind of those, then why did we have these sequences in the film if that's what we're going to do with it and stuff? But the action is paramount. Like, this is one I left the theater going, I can't wait till I watch that again, because the action and everything in it was so much fun.
Definitely a repeatable watch for sure, because, they do a lot of those elements, right? I agree, Norman Reedus wasn't as, like, he was needed in the film, but they didn't give him a lot to chew on, really. Like, he was a part of the plot and necessary for what they were doing, but he didn't get too much of a chance to shine. I'm glad they got to let him mix it up a little bit in the action, because when they did kick in with that was a lot of fun as well. Like I said, we'll sing the praises of the action of the film like all day long, but yeah, I mean, he was great. Ian McShane, you can't have a John Wick film without Ian McShane in it as Winston. Like you said, he's just kind of the overblow. He's kind of like the Morpheus of like this entire universe. Absolutely. If you were to kind of make a Matrix comparison with the Keanu, the Keanu tie-in and everything, but he's kind of that role here.
Even though we've had Morpheus in the John Wick universe,
even though we had him, yeah. But I mean, he's very much that type of character, though. But yeah, he's fantastic in this as well. You have, Angelica Houston as the director of the Ballerinas as well.
It was good seeing more of her.
Yeah, I loved her in, so many things, back in earlier parts of her career, that she's kind of this, strong-willed, stubborn director of the Ballerinas, and it's really fun to see her kind of take on a role and choose some scenery with that.
Kind of be nasty, like
very rude, very mean, but I get why she does it for the toughness she's trying to instill in her people. But they've done that to death. But yeah, man, I had a ton of fun watching this. Man, it's going to have high rewatchability for me. I'm excited to see it again. I've watched the John Wick films multiple times too, so this is going to go right back in there. I'd put it right up there with all of those movies. Like, I can't think of a bad John Wick film, and I don't think this one was bad either.
No, not at all. So Ballerina was a fun, big action film that, even though it seemed like it had problems in production, the story is a little weaker on it. That's where I'm going to really be taking my deductions from, because Ana de Armas was fantastic in it. Everyone played their roles well. We got to see Lance Reddick one more time. The action was just fantastic. Like, this is the group that knows how to do action. Like, you've got Tom Cruise and his group with between Top Gun Maverick and doing the Mission Impossibles, but this is the other group that is just really nailing action. I'm going to give Ballerina an 8 simply because of how much enjoyment I got out of the action and stuff with it. The story does lose. Those 2 points are mainly fully deducted from the story elements, and there are some laughable moments with the story in it, but it got a good balance to me because I enjoyed Ana de Armas so much in it, and the action sequences were so fantastic that I want to go back and rewatch it just to watch the action.
Yeah, I was gonna give it an 8 as well, because, like you said, the story, like, the only real issue I had was kind of some of the necessary elements of the story, just kind of being a little thin and not really helping the plot of the story that much. Like, it really didn't pay off in in a super satisfactory way with the cult and her ties to it and everything and the way that comes together. Like, I was just like, you probably could have avoided all of this and still had a really solid film. So I'll knock it down a little bit for that. But yeah, like you said, action is on point. So good. Ana de Armas is fantastic. Keanu Reeves is just, I mean, good Lord. He's a national treasure. Like, he's amazing. I love everything that he's in, everything that he's a part of. And, you know, give me Keanu Reeves doing these types of movies until he's 90. It's the running joke now that they've done that with that.
He's 90.
He jokingly says he's got bad knees and he's getting ready to do John Wick 5. So what, you know, what are we going to do here? But yeah, like for this film, it's got a high rewatchability that scores big points in my book too. Like if it's a film I actively would go out of my way to watch again, you're going to score a little higher than you normally would. Like, there's so many good elements of this film that hold it up versus a thinner plot line, which normally we would hammer a movie for. I think dropping it down 2 whole points just based on that is kind of warranted. So 8's a really solid place to land on this film. It's so much fun. We can't recommend it enough going to see it in theaters, but Ballerina is out in theaters now. Go see it in the theaters. It's one heck of a good time, like going and seeing it there, because worth it on the big screen. It's big budget blockbuster action that you want to see on your film screens. This is one textbook for that.
Yeah, I say if you're a fan of any of the John Wick films, you're going to enjoy this. I don't see why, because you're getting exactly what most people go into John Wick films for, is that incredible action, and they do not skimp on it at all. I mean, you have very comparable action, memorable sequences that you've gotten from the John Wick films. Like I said, the flamethrower and grenade sequences are going to be probably talked about for quite a while.
Awesome visual stuff for sure. Excited to check that one out. If you go see it, come to our comments on our YouTube. Let us know what you think about it. Come to our Discord if you watched it. Let us know your thoughts about Ballerina. Excited to talk about the film with anyone that wants to talk about it for sure. But now I want to move us into our other film review of the week. Dropping on Hulu this week, we have Predator, Killer of Killers. This is a 3-part anthology story kind of coming together, and you didn't know how they were going to connect really, like based on the time jumps. So you have a Predator story in 3 different timelines, and you're like, okay, how are they going to connect it? And you know, watching it makes perfect sense with what they're doing, but this was a really well done visual, graphic, bloody, violent story told in 3 parts. So you kick off part 1 with like a Norse Vikings kind of story called The Shield, following this main character Ursa and her son, who are going to, you know, get revenge on this Viking that led a group that killed her father, and you know they're warring tribes, and this is all a big revenge plot, and it kind of kicks off from there. Man, this, like, the action in this one was crazy, just the straight up raw violence and grit, and I wasn't prepared for how like heavy it went with that, but they did not skimp on this whatsoever.
It's really intriguing how each story has a different flow to it, because the Norse Viking is that story, The Shield, is much more brutal and violent. You have a Predator that is gigantic, muscle-wise, height-wise. Like, he's huge. He's not really wearing much armor. He's got this like sonic weapon that he uses and stuff, but it's a very just kind of vicious battles that they go through and stuff. And Ursa is a very vicious person. Like, nothing's going to stand in her way of getting her revenge and protecting her son, and that's, you know, her main motivations. Each story is roughly 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes long. So you might think, well, it's not giving enough time. It does just enough for each of these stories to make them interesting and fun and stuff. And they all have the same animation style, but like I said, they all have different flows and ebb and flows and stuff to them. But the animation can be a little jerky. It can be a little odd to get used to. They made this all in Unreal Engine, the video game engine. And the style looks great. It looks heavily detailed and stuff, but the animation can be a little off-putting at first. It takes you a little bit to fall into it. After that, you're fine with it. It just has this kind of weird, herky-jerky type of style to it. Like, it doesn't look bad. That's the only like real knock I can give this, is that the animation to take me out of it just a little bit until I got used to that kind of jerky motion, because it looked like video game cutscene type of like stuff that's been rendered in engine that you're watching and stuff. It did kind of have that feel, but I got over it quickly. but it does take you out a little bit of Ursa's story in the beginning. But yeah, going on from that, our second story is set in feudal Japan.
Yeah.
And that's the sword. And again, this one was much different. Like it's all in Japanese, but you only get dialogue in the beginning and the end. You don't really have anything in the middle, so everything is conveyed through emotion and everything that's going on. And the main story is that you have these two brothers where their warlord dad is making them fight against each other, and one of the brothers is injured, and he runs off and escapes, and kind of don't see him again until we see that the father, it's like 20 years later, and the father has died, and the other brother returns in all ninja gear and get up and challenges and fights his brother. But I forget to going back to the sword, and the shield has it as well, or going back to the shield, just same as the sword. We get this story that plays out, and it's not till like the very, like we see the Predator looking over everything, but it's not until pretty much the climax that we get the Predator really showing up, and we get different type of battles. So like in the sword, we get the brothers kind of dueling and fighting with each other, and they've kind of ended that, and then the Predator shows up. So it's kind of an interesting way that they decided to do those two, because these two are the most similar in the way they presented, because they were both, I guess the brother was coming back for revenge, and he wasn't happy what's going on, and then the Predator, because he's looking for warriors, so he hones in on Ursa, and they hone in on these two brothers to see, all right, who's the best warrior out of all these fighters. Because like with the sword one, he's fully decked out as Predator, very skinny, still tall, but he's got all of his weapons and long daggers and a big spear that can extend and stuff. So these two are very similar, but very different in the tone and the pacing of it.
Yeah, for sure. And you jump into the third one as well, which is called The Bullet. And before I get into that, the one knock I'm going to have on this, like mainly, is I don't think they do an effective job of showing how they all came together, how they all got captured necessarily. And because you see by the end of their stories, you have like this pan out where they're wearing like this blinking collar, and they're sitting in what you find out to be is like a transportation vehicle, like a ship or whatever. But you don't know how they've come together and where they've been until you discover all the the cryostasis stuff that they use and whatnot. But you don't see them actually being taken.
Yeah, because spoiler-wise, they defeat the Predator at the end of each of these.
Yeah, so in the end, these guys all prove their worth by actually killing a Predator. And it's the one thing that I wish they would have included in how they got captured and put in and brought together. But individual stories, they were all fine. They were all done really well. Love the second part of the sword. The third one is about this young man named Torres, who's voiced by Rick Gonzalez, who love Rick Gonzalez. Rick Gonzalez is awesome in everything he's in. And, he's wanting to be, this successful pilot around the time of World War II. And, you get this attack on the planes in the sky where they see this giant, it's hooks coming from the sky. We don't know what's going on. And, you clearly find out that it's a Predator ship that's, attacking this fleet and trying to find the most bravest, soldier amongst them all to kind of join this thing that they've got going on in the end. But you get this cool story with Torres, who's just wanting to prove his worth, and he just wants to be a good pilot. And you see, that story play out, and it's very stylistically different from the other two. But it makes sense given the time frame that these all take place, because you have the very gritty, violent Viking times where it's much more raw and savage and brutal, and you get much more of the stylized, romanticized Japanese, warrior times where it's much more stylized and smooth and beautiful and artistic. And then you get a full-on world war here where it's, it felt, obviously it's the more modern of the three, timeline-wise, but it has a very different look and feel and aesthetic. And I kind of like that from those three. Like they felt stylized, true to the time frame that they took place in. So I think they did a really good job of that. But this Bullet story was also a really solid way to kind of bring all of them together. And you see just how crucial Torres is overall by the end, by the time you see them all coming together and what the end game is for this film.
And I gotta say, the third one with the Bullet has a cameo that the directors did on purpose,
right,
which is Michael Biehn, who plays Vandy, his commander and stuff. If you recognize that name, he's been killed by a Terminator and he's been killed by a xenomorph alien. Well, now you can count it. It's animated, but he's also been killed by a predator now. Yeah. So you got him joining Bill Paxton as the only two who have been killed by a Terminator, an alien, and a predator. So, and they said specifically, when we originally wrote Vandy, we were looking at it, he didn't fit that character, but so we couldn't pass up the opportunity to have him get killed by a predator and have him get the trifecta, which it was a nice little touch to throw him in there.
That's so funny. I love that.
It's a nod and a love that Dan has showed, that because this is Dan Trachtenberg, who did Prey. He's also doing Predator Badlands, which comes out later in this year. So he's kind of connecting the Predator worlds and everything together, and giving a little love to the Terminator and Alien series and stuff as well. But that was great. But yeah, they, like I said, on their own, they all three were very different, separate stories. Except with the Shield was very gritty and violent with a big brooding predator, and then you get the Sword, which is very, beautiful samurai ninja action, and you get a fully decked out skinnier predator that they have to try to outsmart him, and then with the Bullet, it's all aerial combat with him and stuff. So you've got, they're realizing, well, he's tracking us by heat, which that was like, how did a World War II pilot know that this alien ship is detecting them based on heat? There's nothing really. That's another knock I could give to that. Like, how would he understand that it's doing it off of heat? Like, he's just tracking you like a normal kind of plane would, even though he's using fantastical weapons and stuff, which was really cool sequences of how those like bombs would hit and then they break into spears, and some like scorpion stuff coming out to like get over here with the hooks and the spears and stuff they use. But I didn't know how it was going to end, because we got these three separate stories. And he said, when it went from the Shield to the Sword, you got a little fade there where you see Ursa standing there, and then you see, I'm going to say it's Kenji. They gave names of the characters, but they never really mentioned the names in there. And then it fades in that. But when you're done with the Bullet, this is where you were talking about. You see all of three of them are in a Predator ship. They've been captured. They have these collars on, and they've basically taken them to a Roman Colosseum. Even the Predators looked like they had Roman helmets. They were like Roman helmets. That looked really cool, but you're basically taken to a Predator Roman Colosseum where another big giant Predator comes out with spines for a cape and stuff, which looked really cool. And the necklaces that they were wearing serve two different purposes. One, it can translate what the Predators are saying so they could understand. He basically says, you three have to fight. One of you will face off against me. Only one can live. And the other point is to blow their heads off if they don't do what they plan to do, which we get shown. And this is very brutally violent stuff. Like, the ending was very fun and what they did in there and stuff. It also went a little kind of over the top. Like, you got Torres with the alien creature and being in the stomach of it and everything else that we've seen in so many different type of movies and stuff as well. And you have the language barrier, because while we understood Ursa in her story, now we're getting her talking in her Norse language that no one understands. And you have Kenji talking in Japanese that Torres knows a little bit from the war, but it was a funny little interaction stuff. But there's that language barrier. But Torres and Kenji both are like, we don't need to fight. Like, we need to work together. Me and my brother work together to defeat the Predator that weekend, but they can't communicate that with each other. They're trying to, by their actions, communicate what they're trying to do. But Ursa's like, I just want to get back to my son, so you all have to die.
Right, and she was very, very headstrong and stubborn and wanting to kind of fight her way through, because it's the only way she knows how, right? And it was a fun dynamic between the three, and it was fun trying to see Torres being kind of that middle ground to kind of bridge the gap between the two, because you have the fun standoff between Kenji and Ursa, where Kenji's like, I'm laying down my sword. We don't have to do this. I'm trying to show you, like, I'm not your enemy here. Like, we don't have to follow their rules. We can find a way out of this and, get all out together if we work together. Mm-hmm. Like, we can all make it out and go back to where we need to go. And it was that part of it was a fun sequence of events that led to, obviously we're not. It's not that super spoilerly. Like all these guys make it out, right? Or they seem to make it out, which is
not in one piece.
Yeah, not in one piece for sure. But you have them trying to make it out, and they get out and go on and take off the ship, and they take off, and where we go from there is we see Ursa kind of staying back and being the one to kind of let Kenji and Torres take off in the ship, and she kind of sacrifices herself to kind of let them get away and escape, and kind of this noble moment for her. And we cut to the end of the movie, and you have her being in the cryostasis, being wheeled off through this warehouse, which is very Raiders of the Lost Ark-esque type of temple. But as you're kind of getting the lay of the land there, and you're seeing where they're taking her, you see all of these other like human and alien type creatures that are also in cryostasis, and you're like, what is all this for? And they leave us with a really cool little nugget at the end, and I'm going to spoil it, everybody, so if you don't want to know what's up with it, just skip to the end for our review. But they wheel past a body, and they zoom in on that body, and the body that we see in a really cool moment to kind of tie it into the other films that we've seen is you get Naru, the main character from Prey, in the cryostasis, and you're like, oh, that's so cool. That's such a cool way to end it. And then it cuts to black, and you're like, dang it. Like, what is this? Like, this is obviously setting up for something else, and we're going to get more animated features from this. But that was such a cool little tidbit to end it on, because Naru, obviously, awesome, Prey, love the movie. And it was just so cool to kind of fade in. I'm like, no, that couldn't be. And they zoom a little closer, and you're like, it is, it's her. Like, you see with the, the black, the black paint on the face and everything, and the war paint and stuff that she had on it. I was just like, yes, I love Naru. This is so cool. Like, it was a really cool moment to kind of end it on. It's very clearly setting something else up, and I hope we get more of this anthology type stuff that leads to some kind of big payoff, and I hope we get more from that.
Yes, we're left now like, okay, is Predator Badlands going to show us these chambers and show these characters? Are we setting up for a Predator, maybe an Alien versus Predator movie after this, where we can bring in all these different characters from different timelines and worlds? Like, it could set up for a really interesting Predator movie where you could have Native Americans from their time, along with Norse Vikings and Japanese samurai and World War II pilots, and you could have so many different people from so many different timelines. This movie set it up like, okay, this is how we do it. They have a way to cryo, which we've had in the Alien films, that we've shown that they can, put themselves into a cryo sleep to be able to be taken around everywhere. I think this really is, we don't see a xenomorph, but I do feel like this is a way, like they're trying to connect these worlds of Aliens. If you've watched a Predator Badlands, you know that we do have an alien cyborg in that movie as well. So there are connections that are all setting up. So I have a feeling after Predator Badlands, we either have an Alien versus Predator movie, or we have a Predator movie that is like all of these cryo people are let out into a big new arena. Because, I mean, I would love to see another animated film out of this in the same style and them do it again, because it did leave it open to where, Torres and Kenji are flying off, but of course they're in an alien spaceship, they're on an alien world, they have no idea where they are, they don't know how to get back to Earth, and the big Predator sends like 30 ships after them, so we really don't know in the end what's going to happen with them. We know mainly in the end that Ursa is the one who survived because she got put into cryosleep and stuff. But that was, I rewound it several times because I'm looking like, all right, there's got to be, is there someone else? Is Michael Biehn in there somewhere? Is he gonna pop back up? Is you got Arnold Schwarzenegger somewhere in there? Like, do we have Alien, Terminator, Predator, different people? And then we get Prey shown, which was Dan's first foray into the Predator world, which they basically turned over from him. He did Prey, he did this animated anthology, and he's also doing Badlands. So they've turned it over for him, and so far he's 2 for 2.
Absolutely. I think he's knocked it out of the park with both. Like, I was genuinely surprised at how brutally violent this was in several ways, because they did not mince anything on going there violently wise, but it serves the story well too, because these are brutal creatures that do very dark, brutal things, and it was just a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun watching this because, it's setting up some potential stuff. I love the intermix of obviously Naru, who is a live action character showing up in the animated feature here. Are these characters going to show up in the live action version if they do go that route? Like, that's an interesting tidbit to have as well. Who knows? But that was a really cool nugget to end on, that I was just like, yes, let's see how this all
It sets up for so they could do basically anything they want.
Yeah, there's a lot of different directions that it could go. But in the end, Predator, Killer of Killers is a ton of fun. It's got 3 different stories. They're all very different styles of animation that come together in a beautiful, harmonious way that tells a story that's dark, violent, gritty, and setting up potentially something bigger for the Alien universe. I'm going to give this one a solid 8 as well. Like, I really got a lot of enjoyment out of this, too. The animation styles, like, you could tell they were a little gritty and a little hard to get used to at first, and it was a little jarring, but once they got into it, it was a ton of fun. But, yeah, man, I got so much enjoyment out of this too that I want to go back and revisit it again to kind of pick up some of the stuff that I may have missed watching it the first time, now that I know that it's really interconnected to a bigger story potentially, and I'm excited to see where they go next. So I landed on an 8. That's where I'm landing on.
I'm giving it an 8 as well. It was a ton of fun. It had those sort of quirky moments that you had to laugh at. Again, just like Ballerina, it's kind of knocking the story, some of the story elements just a little bit, and it loses some points for the animation just being kind of that jarring at first because it's just not smooth. But once you get used to that method, you enjoy it, but it did take you out of it a little bit. And in an hour and a half running time, having something that takes you out of the film for a little bit can damage it just a little bit, just because you're like, all right, I'm spending the first 10 of this 20-minute story trying to get used to the animation style. But it looked good. It was just the movements were just kind of jarring to you, but it had brutal action. You got to see 3 definitely different types of predators, and even more past that when you got to the ending and stuff, that you get to see that they're not all the same. And I think that's going to be very purposeful for Badlands, because we are seeing different predators in there. We've seen quite a different variety. So I think this was definitely setting up not only Badlands for you to know exactly that there's not just one type of predator. They all have different movements, and they all do things a little bit differently to set up what Badlands is doing. But then it opens up a potential gigantic world for him to play in after Badlands is done. So I'm really curious to see what Badlands shows up after this, and if we end up getting any more animated. But I wasn't expecting. This was kind of one that was like, hey, Badlands is coming in December. We also have another Predator movie coming out. It's animated. Like, okay, animated Predator. They knocked it out of the park. It's well worth a solid 8. It's well worth watching. I'm definitely going to watch it again, and hopefully that Ursa story is not it's not going to be bogged down this time, because I already know what to expect from the animation style, so I can go right back into it. But it tells 3 distinctively different stories of different heroes through time, and then brings them together in a satisfying way towards the end that lets you see that, even, like I said, has a nod to Roman gladiators and stuff in that too. So it's playing so much with different timelines. Like, give me another one where Maximus Aurelius shows up and he's fought a predator and stuff too.
Why not? Why not?
Just bring it all in there. Like, I would love to see do another anthology where we have a Roman gladiator. Give us, what else could we do? Like, you could do Genghis Khan. You have how brutal he is and stuff in there. There's a lot of different timelines, and I would love to see him play with that some more, because this was just so much fun.
Yeah, definitely one worth checking out for sure. But Predator, Killer of Killers is available on Hulu right now. Go check it out, watch it. Come to our comments on our YouTube page. Let us know what you think about it. Come to our Discord if you've seen it. Let us know what you think is going to happen in Predator Badlands. We're excited for that one for sure. Coming up at the end of the year, but we'd love to hear about it. Come let us know what you think.
Yeah, so coming up this week, my kids were so excited for Lilo and Stitch, and they absolutely loved it. Go back in our archives here to see what we thought about it. But the other big film for them this year is a How to Train Your Dragon live-action remake. So you got the director of the animated films, did the live-action movies, basically just straight up and said, well, they were going to do it without me, so might as well try to make sure they do it somewhat right. It looks fun. It looks good. I'm excited to watch it with my kids. Like, I've enjoyed watching that series. I got my oldest daughter, the book series, which she's starting to work through. They are a bit different than the films and stuff, but I am really curious to see if this does kick off, where if they dive more into the books after this one and give us an expanded world, or if they just start doing all the second and third and just kind of doing the animated movies and live action, or if they try to expand a little bit on the books. But this is one that my kid, like behind Lilo and Stitch, this is their big movie of the year.
Yeah, another big family movie. It's going to do really well, I think. I'm excited to see that one, to check it out. And you know, the original, the How to Train Your Dragon animated film is one of my favorite animated films to come out in the last 20 years, and it was really well done. Obviously, they're big pushing that with every different type of integration they could have. You got the new Epic Universe Park, you know, down in Orlando, that has a world completely dedicated to How to Train Your Dragon.
My kids can't wait to get down there.
There's a huge, you know, a huge audience for that, and I'm excited to see how well that does, and if it does the animated films any type of justice, and we'll see if it's good. You know, the animated live action stuff could be hit or miss, so we'll see what comes out of it.
Yeah, I'm looking to see, because a lot of people are, well, if he did the animated films and he wanted to do it to kind of protect the legacy of the films, is this going to be a straight shot to shot remake? So far, the trailers, I don't think we've really seen anything that's not in the animated movie, so it's going to be interesting to see if it is a shot to shot, and if that's satisfying to fans, or if it's not, because you can be, some fans want it to be a shot for shot remake, and they're happy. Others like, well, I hate it because it's a shot for shot remake. I wanted to do something different. And then others, well, I hate it because it did something different.
Yeah,
so
you can't win.
You
can't win. It's 2025. It's just where we're at. Nobody's happy about anything.
And another type of film that can be not win at times is a Stephen King adaptation, because the lovers of the books and the novels and stuff that he's done can be very mixed on the live action, you know, films that they do. And we have another one, which is one of his more interesting stories outside of the horror realm, which is The Life of Chuck. You got Tom Hiddleston, you've got Mark Hamill, quite a big stacked cast. We've heard a lot of buzz about this. This is going to be releasing this week, and I think I've seen 1 to 2 trailers on it. Like, it hasn't had a huge marketing behind it, but it's one. You got Stephen King, you got Tom Hiddleston, and I'm going to be there.
Love Tom Hiddleston. I'm excited to check that one out. It's one we're going to talk about, and I'm excited to put my eyes on it and see what kind of story they tell, for sure.
And then one that we'll see how it ends up doing, because you've got How to Train Your Dragon, you've still got Lilo and Stitch, you've got a Stephen King adaptation that normally does okay just because his name's attached to it, is A Materialist. So this is Pedro Pascal, Chris Evans, Dakota Johnson. It's a romantic comedy where she's kind of torn in between Pedro and Chris, and which one she likes and enjoys it. I've seen one trailer on it. It looks like it'd be interesting, but you've got Chris Evans, you've got Pedro Pascal, and you've got Dakota Johnson. It's going to be interesting to see how that one really does, because I don't really know much about the story past that and what it showed in the trailer. It could be a standard romantic comedy, but you've got some stars that could lead it into something different, mainly with Pedro and Chris. I want to see what their dynamic is, especially since they're kind of, from the trailer, playing competitors for her love, to see how that kind of goes.
It's Pedro Pascal. He can't do any wrong in my eyes. So, yeah, it's definitely one worth checking out for sure. I don't think we're going to get to it in the theater run necessarily, but go support that film, please. Like, I want to try to still make it work and go see it. It's not one that we're going to talk about on this show, but I'm definitely going to try to find time to make my way to see it too.
Yeah, on demand, we have Clown in the Cornfield out on June 10th. So this is a horror film that got a lot of good buzz. I don't think it ever was in theaters around us, or just didn't have a chance. Me and my wife have both been sick for the last couple of weeks and trying to get over that crud. So been mainly sticking to the main stuff that we're talking about on the podcast. And past that, I haven't left the house. So I'm going to check this one out maybe when it gets to streaming. I don't know if I'll buy it or rent it, but we'll see once it gets out on streaming. I want to check that one out and see just how good it is. I mean, you have Children of the Corn meets Killer Clowns from Outer Space potentially, and mashing that up into something could be fun. But I've heard it's pretty gory.
Yeah, it's going to be either really good or really bad. I'm excited to finally put my eyes on it too. It's one I've been wanting to check out for a minute. And you're right, it never came to any theater around us. We never got the opportunity to watch it. Now we'll have the opportunity to do so, and I'm excited to check it out finally.
Yeah, on the TV side, we have Fubar Season 2 on Netflix. So this is an Arnold Schwarzenegger, Monica Barbaro action comedy series. I've heard good things about it. I haven't checked it out yet, but they are adding Carrie-Anne Moss to the series as well. So you've got the Terminator and you have Trinity and everything. So it'll be interesting to see how they play off of each other, because she's playing a German spy. So she potentially going to be a villain in that to his. So I might end up getting around to watching season 1 and see if I tune in season 2, but that'll be dropping on Netflix on June 12th.
It should be a lot of fun. Definitely one to go check out. But that's going to do it for this week's episode. As always, we cannot thank you enough for your continued support to the show. Keep an eye out here coming soon. We are going to be revamping our merch store, so get a chance to check that out when that's coming. We'll have an announcement when that's ready to go live, and we'll let you know when that's coming. But keep an eye out for that one. I think you'll have a lot of fun for the things we got cooking up. It's exciting. But coming up next week, we are going to be reviewing the live-action How to Train Your Dragon film, as well as the Stephen King film adaptation, The Life of Chuck. Can't wait to check both of those out and come and talk about it. But until then, I'm Josh, he's Brad, and we'll see you next week. To find all of the episodes of We'll Bring the Popcorn, go to our YouTube page, hit the like and subscription button so you're getting our episodes when they drop each and every Monday. If you're listening to us in the audio room on any of the podcasting platforms that we're on, please don't forget to give us a 5-star review. It really helps elevate the profile of the show. And don't forget to go to willbringthepopcorn.com, where it has all of our archive videos, all of our social media information, as well as our merch store, so you continue to support the show in that way. We cannot thank you enough for your continued support.